I'll be honest, 5 minutes into this episode, one thought, great, another president runs into his ex plot. But the further it went, the clearer it became that episode 3 is the best episode of President Curtis so far, not just because the plot gets crazier than the first 2 episodes, but because there's a thematic thread running through almost every scene, including the B-plot, that's easy to miss if you're just watching for the jokes. In this video I'm going through the whole episode in order, stopping to break down the parts worth digging into, and saving the thematic connection for the end. Let's get into it. Beverly, Curtis's ex-wife, now freshly elected governor, invites him to her inauguration. Curtis, being Curtis, immediately reads way too much into it. Meanwhile, O'Doyle and Banks get pulled for re-evaluation. The reason: O'Doyle broke a congressman's arm defending Curtis, and Banks, principled to a robotic fault, reported it up the chain. Both get separated from Curtis, leaving him with a temporary agent named Chomps. The interesting part is that Curtis doesn't dislike Chomps because he's incompetent, it's simply because Chomps is too normal. None of O'Doyle's half-leprechaun chaos, nothing to make the job interesting. It's a small detail, but a memorable one, because it gets paid off cleverly by the end of the episode. At the party, we learn about Beverly's biggest political achievement from her time as mayor. She rehabilitated Candyman, the classic urban horror icon, into the face of a civic redemption campaign. From there she built CPP, a system that converts Candyman's murderous energy into electricity, currently powering roughly a fifth of Chicago's grid. This is clearly a parody of those makeover/redemption documentary formats we're used to seeing in political media. And it doesn't stop with Candyman. The Babadook is also among the party guests, which tells us this isn't a one-off gag but an entire political brand Beverly has built, turning monsters into symbols of everyone deserves a second chance. The show also plants a small detail here that repeats throughout. Beverly uses the word nuance when explaining why she had to invite Curtis, while Curtis misuses the word almost every time he brings it up. On the surface it's just a language gag, but hold on to this one, it pays off beautifully at the climax. A werewolf disguised as catering staff starts a fight. Chomps, despite having none of O'Doyle's specialized gear or silver bullets, manages to take the guy down with nothing but the cutlery on the table. This is the first sign that Chomps isn't as useless as Curtis assumes, just normal in a different way. Curtis wants to warn Beverly about the werewolf threat right away, but Chomps talks him out of it, worried about ruining her big night. And this is where the show starts clearly steering away from the jealous ex cliché. Curtis listens, backs off, and prioritizes Beverly's feelings over his own need to control the situation. That's not what a typical cartoon president does. More wolves show up, and the whole party gets taken hostage. In the chaos, Chomps accidentally lets slip to Beverly that Curtis still has feelings for her, a pretty embarrassing moment, but notably Curtis doesn't get angry or dodge it, he just looks embarrassed and keeps handling the situation. The real conflict here isn't between Curtis and Beverly over romance, it's philosophical. Beverly is upset that Curtis is killing werewolves, given that her entire political career is built on the slogan, "Monsters are people too." This is a mature, opinion-based disagreement, not a jealousy plot in disguise. Ironically, the Wolfpack's leader flatly rejects Beverly's goodwill anyway. And here's the best line of the episode, in my opinion. When Candyman tries to talk the wolf leader down with reason, the wolf sneers back that Candyman has sold out his real monstrous nature to become a cute mascot, holding a champagne flute instead of spreading fear. In other words, a monster inside the episode is pointing directly at the core problem with Beverly's entire political campaign. When you domesticate a dangerous symbol for political purposes, what's the cost, and who actually gets to decide on that domestication? The wolf leader plants a bomb, demanding Beverly wire ransom money within 20 minutes. But Beverly outsmarts him instead, revealing she'd already stashed weapons inside the Cloud Gate sculpture, Chicago's famous bean. This is the direct payoff of the nuance setup from earlier. Beverly is the one who actually understands and applies strategic subtlety, while Curtis just repeats the word like a catchphrase. This small detail also quietly explains why the two were a couple in the first place. She's always been a step ahead. Chomps gets hit by wolf teeth and starts to transform. And this is the best character beat of the episode. When asked if he's ready to become a good werewolf, one who hunts bad werewolves, Chomps simply says he'd rather just be himself. It's a short line, but it plugs directly into the who gets to redefine someone else's nature theme that the wolf leader's jab at Candyman had already set up. Even so, even after transforming, Chomps can't stop the wolf leader from grabbing Beverly and dragging her into a room. And in a moment that should be terrifying, The wolf pulls a gun instead of biting her, a funny rug pull that shows that underneath all the "we are monsters" bravado, he's still behaving very human. Candyman is summoned and steps in to save the day, but the person he saves is Beverly, not Curtis. This detail matters more than it looks. It's Beverly's own political legacy. Something she built herself, that comes back to protect her, not Curtis playing hero. Curtis's role here is limited to talking Candyman down from his murderous instincts, a supporting action rather than a romantic rescue. This is why the show keeps its respect for Beverly intact even at its biggest action climax. She doesn't need saving by her ex, she saves herself through her own achievements. The episode closes on a very quiet moment. Curtis asks Beverly whether, if he gave up the presidency, the two of them could work, and, conversely, who she'd be if she weren't governor. This isn't a typical romantic question, it's a question about identity being swallowed by power. The show chooses to end on an open question, rather than forcing a tidy resolution or a contrived cliffhanger, a fairly mature choice compared to most adult anime show. Meanwhile, O'Doyle and Banks go through a simulated training program run by androids, an obvious Westworld parody. O'Doyle thrives as a field agent, even taking down Gunbaby, a bizarre threat everyone considers unbeatable. Banks does well as an executive too, until her instinct to report violations, the exact trait that got both of them sent here in the first place, tanks her score all over again. It's a sharp structural irony, the very quality that makes Banks do things by the book keeps sabotaging her. Banks forces a system reset by pushing the androids into diagnostic mode, but the cost is that the androids suddenly become aware they're just machines, spiraling into a kind of existential crisis and going haywire. On the way out, O'Doyle runs. Cornered, O'Doyle can't bring himself to fake being an android because he's physically incapable of lying, revealed to tie back to unresolved issues with his mother from the previous episode. To him, lying means letting his mother win. So he chooses to freeze and take the hit rather than lie his way out. Banks, being part machine herself, manages to turn the androids against each other with suspicion, buying enough time for O'Doyle to snap out of it and finish them off with silver bullets. Their final exchange carries a much colder edge than the warmth of the main plot. Banks admits she's jealous of some kind of bond O'Doyle has, and he brushes her off with a fairly cutting line, something like "Don't be. You'll still get all the credit." That line lands colder than expected, and it hints at real unresolved tension between the two underneath their easy partner dynamic. Personally, I have my own theory here. Remember, at the end of episode 1, O'Doyle was shown stockpiling a stash of EMP grenades, most likely in case Banks' semi-android nature glitches out again. If the show keeps developing this sibling-like dynamic, that cold exchange in episode 3 could be planting the seed for a genuinely heartbreaking conflict down the line, not just comic relief bickering between two co-workers. Now let's put the pieces back together. Chomps refuses to become a good werewolf. The androids go haywire because they're forced into self-awareness they never asked for. Candyman gets mocked by his own kind for selling out his monstrous nature to become a political prop. Three details that seem unrelated are actually saying the same thing. The whole episode revolves around the question of who has the right to redefine someone else's nature and who pays the price when they're never asked.